Welcome to Bible in the Backyard. Here we are in chapter 9 in the book of Deuteronomy, and we have a repeated emphasis of the Israelites inheriting the land, and we're told by Moses that they won't be inheriting of their own merit. In fact, they've angered God over the past 40 years in the desert, and so they're inheriting out of kind of the zchut avot, in the merit of their forefathers, which actually is kind of a nice thing. It works out for them. They don't deserve it, but they're getting it. They're going into the land. But it also seems to violate certain principles of justice, right, of getting what you deserve, and kind of reward and punishment. And so how do we understand in this chapter God's own almost violation of his own sense of justice
Right, so the example that we have is actually a tough one because it's interesting. We presumably very much like the idea of zchut avot, of being, benefiting from the merit that our ancestors accrued. We certainly appeal to it in the prayers all the time. The Akedah, the binding of Isaac, is probably the archetype where we just refer to it all the time and say, in the merit of that,
right,
forgive us, accept us back, and so on. But without worrying too much about the details of this example, I do want to just point out that mercy is the opposite of justice, is one opposite of justice. So when you say it violates God's principles of justice, that's true, but we actually ask him to violate justice all the time. We tend not to think about this. We think of that injustice as a bad thing, but non-justice, in other words, something like an act of grace or mercy, is something we depend on. And I think certainly in a case like the Torah and Jewish thought, it's always been understood that strict justice is not going to work out well for us. So we actually don't want God to, quote unquote, sit on the seat of justice or the throne of justice all the time. We want him to sometimes get up and move to the throne of mercy. And that is a violation of justice. We sort of trust God to balance these principles well in running the world, but we don't want him to stick to one all the time.
Yeah, so if I would say it's less a violation of justice than it is just sort of operating out of a different boundary altogether, right?
Right.
Different
Meaning it's a violation if we
play.
assume that justice should be the governing principles, but that's one of the governing principles, but he actually has a bunch of mutually contradictory governing principles which have to be juggled all the time. So this is not just, that seems right. Interestingly, later on the book of Kings will say we get banished from the land for the sins of our ancestors also.
So it works both ways.
It works both ways, exactly. Sort of take it as a package.
Thank you.